Our Kenya trip started October 1st, 2013. We worked with our mission team from Woodlands Church. This included Sandy and Darren Dillon, Kelsey Hines, Marty Jurkowski, myself, and Pastor Caleb Magnino. What a great group to work with. We got along well. In Nairobi, we worked with Woodlands Church, Nairobi. These folks are genuine, loving, kind, and faithful followers. They included Pastor Morris, Pastor Oscar, Stephen, Gladys, Faith, Catherine, John Armouche, Enos, and Daniel. One of the first people we met was a young man by the name of Michael, and he just came to Christ and loved to help Woodlands Church, Nairobi with their missions. What a great hotel. And it had many amenities we did not expect, such as a pool, which we did not use. Food was always buffet style, but very good, and we had an opportunity to try some new things. Much of what we traveled in Nairobi were through the slums, and Ongata Rongai was the area that our church works in, and specifically one slum area there. As you travel through the city in Ongata Rongai, you'll see poverty in many ways. And of course, when you see a lot of trash on the road, those are signs of poverty. People carrying bottles of water, or a donkey with bottles of water. Goats in the street are common too. Here you can see goats in them next to an apartment building and a donkey on a cart. We see a lot of manual labor as men digging ditches. The first school we worked at was Nikhil Primary with 1,700 students. Here, English is the primary language, but they do speak Swahili most in the homes. And this mission statement included spirituality, which I thought was quite interesting. Bathroom facilities, all areas, were basically outhouses. This principal, right there you saw the special ed room. She was quite proud of that. Here is an example of a child's composition book, all written in Swahili. Woodlands Church, Nairobi works in many ways. One of the things they did was paint some classrooms. The next school we went to was on the first full day, high school. There's I'm not sure how many kids, maybe 200 here. The government had given them a chemistry room, but there was no water, no chemicals or anything. Great kids to work with, very respectful, good manners. Another place we went to was an indisplaced persons camp called Jakazi. Here our church had put in a water well many years ago. The water comes out very hot and they have to put it in special tanks so it will cool. Here's our driver, Karani, as we delivered food to Jakazi group. And here's Pastor Caleb preaching to the Jakazi people.
And let me tell you something. When we shared your story with our friends in Haiti, the spirit of Jakazi, that thing inside of you that makes your
The lady next to Marty was very talkative and very nice to speak to, and she and Marty got along very well. This young lady showed us her garden. She was very proud of it. It was probably the best garden in that whole area. These people had nothing, mud homes or stick homes, very proud. We saw very little trash or no trash at all in this area, which was much different than the slums in Nairobi. And here Sandy was praying and talking to one of the Jakazi ladies. The school was built 4 classrooms for $1,000 with mud walls, very few supplies. Next thing we went on was a water safari. Had a great time, saw all kinds of animals, waterfowl of different types, hippos and giraffes. That day we did not expect the sunny weather out on the lake, and so we did get sunburned. We saw fishermen in the area, and they have to be very careful of the hippos because hippos do not like people in the water. These birds were very interesting because they glittered in the sun. It was not unusual to see herdsmen everywhere going up and down the roads with their herds of goats and sheep and cattle. Many times as we traveled Nairobi or outside of Nairobi, we went through the Great Rift Valley, and we got to enjoy some of their local drinks. This drink had ginger in it. It was very tasty. One of the things we did was buy some souvenirs and so forth at a place called John's you see on the left there. All these items at John's were hand carved in the back, and Marty and I we did some bargaining and got some very good prices on some giraffes. And on that trip that day, we saw baboons in the road and zebras. One day we went out and visited a Maasai school and a Maasai tribe. They get very few visitors. Mostly the only people that come are the Woodlands Church Nairobi people as they work with the students. This was a classroom we were in. You can see us in the back. Very barren. Very few desks even. One classroom of 30 maybe had 6 desks. One of the things they like to do is jump from standing still in one position, see how high they can jump. Maasai kids were surprised that American students in schools do not wear uniforms. They got real excited about my watch, like it was something they had never seen, and Marty's hair was very different to them. They had to touch it. Here is a Maasai lion fence that goes around the perimeter of the homes. Maasai home maybe 5 foot high, made out of mud, manure, and sticks. And if you look closely, you'll see this lady's earrings, very intricate beading. Here we worked in the slums in Rangata Rangai, bringing people to Christ, asking them to come to church. We worked, of course, along with the pastors, as Pastor Oscar you see there, and other laymen for the Nairobi Church. Woodlands Church, Nairobi, works out of Nakuru Academy School. They pitched their tents for church in their yard on Sundays. We had about 100 on a Sunday that we were there. And here's the senior pastor, Pastor Morris. A lot of good singers. This is the group we also work with in the slums and in the schools. And here's Catherine and her 3 children. She has quite a story, HIV/AIDS. She sells her wares, and we took back a lot of them to sell in the Woodlands Church. Here's Pastor Caleb with a bunch of purses he bought for Woodlands Church, the Woodlands. And here's Daniel. He paints. He had some great pictures, and several of us bought them. We went to other free trade areas. Here we bought several items of handmade goods. And the Kazuri bead factory is quite interesting. We were there and shopped, but the day we got there, the factory was closed. Here you can see some pictures of them hand making the beads. After our mission group left, Marty and I started a 4-day safari, and our driver Ken led us and showed us all the animals in 2 parks. The first park we went to was Lake Nakuru, where we stayed. Was a very beautiful facility, Lake Nakuru Lodge. The lodge had beautiful grounds, very nice restaurant. Again, all the food was buffet style, so you could eat all you want, and tried many different foods the Kenyan way. This is an outdoor bar. And again, they had a pool too, but we never used it. We came across this little creature as we were walking to our room. Our room had a patio door with seating outside that we could watch the zebras walk by. All kinds of elk and gazelle, many zebras, lots of water buffalo. Because of a lake, there was a lot of waterfowl here too. And I really like this video. If you watch it, look for the zebras as they each try to cross the water, that little creek, in different ways. It was quite interesting. This was at dusk, so the lighting is not the best. Again, we saw a lot of water buffalo, some giraffes, and ostriches. The ostriches are very fast, and sometimes it's hard to get good pictures. This poor little lion was injured. If you'll look at his right front leg underneath there, looks like he had some kind of injury. And he was walking right down the side of the road as we were driving by. The rhinos were way out in the field. We weren't able to get very close to them, so we had to zoom in with our cameras. Probably best, as they're very big and powerful animals.
and it's getting blurry. I don't understand.
Push it in halfway and it should focus.
I think that's what happened. Yeah, it did. Here.
More water buffalo, just kind of lounging around. And, lots of pink flamingos at Lake Nakuru, hundreds of them. This bird was quite interesting in their beak. We were unable to get their name.
I love it up there where he's on.
These two little monkeys were sitting right by the side of the road, almost greeting us as we entered the park. Thompson gazelle, and boy can they run fast. On the second full day of our safari, we went to Masai Mara, very bumpy dirt road the last 90 minutes of the ride in. In fact, we drove out in a dirt field most of the time. Here a lady washes her clothes. This is a Maasai lady. You can see them far off in the distance because of their bright clothing as you're driving through the area. On our second and third nights we spent at this Centra Mara tented camp. Here you can see Marty lounging on one of the beds in the tented camp. We had mosquito netting. Really never had mosquitoes on this trip, so it wasn't all that necessary. In fact, I never got bit once. The weather was such that we didn't need air conditioning or heating. Very temperate climate, very enjoyable. Probably saw a dozen different lion in different instances at Masai Mara. Huge park, hundreds of miles of area that it covers. Right on the border of Tanzania. And of course, when you're seeing most of these animals are just constantly eating. Lots of grass though. And as we were driving down this road, we came across this elephant. We decided not to continue down that road and eventually made a right-hand turn here.
Oh, wonderful.
Here we saw three cheetahs just lounging on this mound. One is hardly visible in the back. It's hard to get him.
Has come and they can just find some way there, like some
Good, really good pictures.
yeah, good picture.
Most of the vegetation are trees, are acacia trees, but this was a sausage tree that had these 12, 18-inch pieces of fruit that they actually make into a beer. Saw many dead animals around. Of course, they've already been enjoyed by the locals. And this is an interesting antelope called a topai. Hundreds and thousands of wildebeest travel, from Tanzania and other countries throughout this whole region freely looking for water and grasslands. The eland was the largest antelope that we saw, and then here was the Jackson's hartebeest. Giraffes sometimes were hard to pick out in the trees. Their camouflage is so good. And here's this male lion just kind of enjoying himself. Got a lot of activity that day, so he didn't stick around too long and then took out, and it was hard to follow him. Here we saw some monkeys along the road with the mothers holding on to the little ones. Another thing we came across was this cheetah right after a kill of a small wildebeest. He was eating its intestines and finally took a breath and looked up and paid attention to us. At the Masai Mara River, we saw a lot of hippos. It was quite we had to be very careful here because the hippos are very dangerous, and they had a guard near this area with a rifle. Then we came across this huge crocodile, about 20-some feet long, 4 or 5 feet wide. Lots of good lion pictures here. We got very close to them. This male lion was just laying there taking a sleep. As we were watching this pride of lions, you know, they look just so docile, and you could just get right out there and pet them, but hear them roar a couple times, and that would definitely prevent us from leaving the truck. As we were driving along the road, we came across this field where these monkeys were playing on the bars. And then these storks, thousands of them. Boy, did they stink, though. And of course, what do you need is something to pick up after everybody else. On the last day, in the late afternoon, we saw this giraffe. I'd put all my camera equipment away and was watching him. I pulled out my iPhone and started taking a videotape of him. And in a minute, you'll see where he starts walking around the back of our Toyota Land Cruiser. So at the end of our trip, we returned back to Nairobi on October the 12th, a Saturday. Good 6+ hour trip, hard roads to Nairobi, and we stopped off and had lunch at Carnivores, a very nice Brazilian-like steakhouse with all kinds of different meats to choose from. Beautiful place, nice grounds, and then we had a long trip back to Houston.